The atmosphere was so heavy after the funeral. I could feel everyone's eyes boring into my back as we stood stiffly in front of our house. All those people who had come to pay their respects had gone, and it was just me and my husband, Jack. I walked inside and turned around. The house felt cold and empty. It suddenly seemed a lot bigger now that he wasn't here. I heard sobbing coming from the bedroom. My heart crumbled. It was him. I rushed over and threw myself into his arms. He held me tightly, burying his face into my hair. I whispered, "It's all right," but my voice sounded hollow even to me. It wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. When he pulled away from me, I saw the state he was in. His face was pale and puffy, eyes red and swollen. Every time I looked at him, it felt like my insides were being ripped apart. I knew what was going on. It was grief, the kind that can drown a person, pull them under, and keep them there. I had seen it before. My parents had died when I was young, and I remembered how it felt to be consumed by such deep sorrow that it became your entire world. Jack was like that now. He cried every night. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night and whisper her name. Other times he would sit on the sofa staring at photographs of her, a lost and distant look on his face. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to reach through the fog of his grief, shake him and bring him back to me, but all I could do was watch and wait. I cooked meals and brought them to him. Sometimes he ate, sometimes he didn't. I sat with him in silence, holding his hand, willing him to look at me, to let me in. But his grief was a wall between us, and I couldn't get past it. Days turned into weeks. Jack still wore the same clothes he'd been wearing the day she died. Her scent still lingered on them. I did my best to keep the house in order, to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I told myself that eventually the intensity of his grief would lessen, that he would come out of his room and talk to me again, that he would eat, sleep, and function like a normal person. But it never happened. His tears never dried. His distance never lessened. The weight of his sadness filled every corner of our home, suffocating me. Then I began to feel invisible. It was as if I were living in a haunted house and the ghost was him. It wasn't that he was angry or abusive. He was just so full of sorrow that nothing else mattered. He barely acknowledged my presence. When he did, his eyes were vacant and lifeless. One morning I woke up and caught him staring at me. For a moment, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe he was coming back to me, but then he looked away. I reached out to touch him, but he flinched as if I had hurt him. "What's wrong?" I whispered. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with a bottomless sadness. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't mean to ignore you, but I can't seem to stop thinking about her." I understood. Grief had him by the throat and he couldn't breathe. How could he think of anything else? How could I make him? Each day, I tried to chip away at the wall around him, hoping to find the Jack I married, the man whose absence now echoed in the empty spaces of our home. But as the days dragged on, I began to lose hope. I still loved him, but what was I loving? A shadow of the man I fell in love with, a mere husk animated only by his torment. Then small things began to change. He withdrew further into himself. He stopped meeting my eyes. He spoke less, ate less, slept less. He spent hours outside or locked in his room. One morning I went to wake him up and found the side of the bed cold and empty. I searched the house for him, my heart pounding in my chest. I found him standing by the windows staring out into the garden. "Where were you?" I whispered. Startled, he turned around. I just needed some air," he stammered, looking away. "Why didn't you wake me up?" "I was sleeping," I said. "You weren't," he replied, his voice flat and emotionless. That evening, I made dinner and took it to him. He was sitting in his chair staring at the floor. I set the meal down on the table beside him, and he finally looked at me. His eyes were empty, devoid of any emotion. He looked right through me, as if I were a stranger. Fear constricted my throat. What was happening to him? Why was he avoiding me? Had he really lost her to grief? Was this what it meant when they said someone had died of a broken heart? He pushed the food away. "Eat something," I pleaded. "You haven't touched your food all day. You have to keep your strength up." He shook his head. "I'm not hungry." Suddenly, he stood up, knocking the chair over. He walked past me without a word and disappeared into his room. I heard the sound of the bolts sliding into place and my blood ran cold. What was he doing? Why was he locking himself in there? Hours passed. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I walked to his door and knocked hesitantly. "Jack," "Are you all right?" I asked. There was no reply. I knocked again, louder this time. "Please open the door. Jack, let me in," I cried. But my pleas were ignored. In the morning, I awoke to the sound of birds chirping. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and got out of bed. As I walked past Jack's side of the bed, I noticed that the space where his body usually lay was empty. I froze. Where was he? Had he left the house in the middle of the night? Had he gone to see her? Panic surged through me. What if he had an accident? What if he was lying somewhere hurt and helpless? I raced to the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked around frantically, searching for something, anything that could give me an indication of where he might be. Then I saw it, a letter lying on the counter. My hands trembled as I reached out to pick it up. The letter was addressed to me in his familiar handwriting. My fingers traced the words, each stroke of his pen, a fresh wound on my soul. As I read the letter, the room seemed to spin around me. His words, so full of pain and sorrow, echoed in my ears, amplifying my own grief. He spoke of his overwhelming sadness, his inability to cope with her loss, his longing to be with her. And then, like a punch to the gut, he told me he was leaving. He had decided to join her, to be with her wherever she was. My breath hitched. Was this goodbye forever? Had he really chosen death over life, over me? I sank to the floor, the letter falling from my numb fingers. Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of his absence crushed me. The house, once filled with his laughter and warmth, now felt like a tomb. His lingering scent, once a source of comfort, was a painful reminder of what I'd lost. Each room, each corner, each wall bore witness to our shared memories, mocking me with echoes of his presence. The days that followed were a blur. Some days I didn't even leave the bedroom. I would lie on our bed, listening to the rain, watching the gray skies through the window, waiting for him to come back. I waited for the phone to ring, for the front door to open, for his footsteps to echo in the hallway. But all I heard was the ticking of the clock, a relentless reminder of the passing time, of the moments we'd never get back. The vibrant colors of the world seemed to fade to gray. The sun's warmth no longer reached me. The laughter of children sounded distant and distorted. Even the taste of food was different, bland and meaningless. How could this be the same world without him in it? Slowly, painfully, I began to understand. Sometimes grief doesn't only take the dead, it takes away the living too, leaving the ones left behind to mourn twice. Once for the loss of the person they loved, and again for the loss of themselves.